What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the College Football Show here on the Post-Gazette Sports Now YouTube channel. I am Noah Hiles. He is Andrew Destin. And Andrew, bowl season it's almost here, one day away. Tomorrow at 11 o'clock, Friday afternoon, we have, what's the first one? The Bahamas Bowl always kicks it off, right?
Absolutely.
Miami UAB, if I'm not mistaken.
Believe
Miami of Ohio.
Yeah.
I don't care who it is. There's going to be football on my TV. You know, I'm either going to be getting on a plane heading home from Omaha, or I'm going to be hanging out doing what there is to do in Omaha, which is nothing. And either way, I'm going to be watching some football tomorrow, and I'm really excited. So with bowl season approaching and everything, another focus of our coverage goes into recruiting in the offseason. And signing day, as we record this on the 15th, is less than a week away. It's on Tuesday. Or is it? No, it's a week away. Or no, less than a week away. It's Wednesday, December 21st.
Yes.
So that'd be 6 days. That's less than 7, which is less than a week. There's my math. But nonetheless, signing day is approaching. Should be a very interesting signing day for both Pitt and Penn State. Penn State always going after, the top of the top, trying to take that next step and get even with a Michigan or an Ohio State. Pitt, an interesting signing day simply because two of their most high-profile recruits have decommitted recently. So you don't know really who's coming in and who's not. So we'll start there, Andrew, with some guys that you do expect to sign with Penn State. I'll give some that I expect to sign with Pitt, some guys that have given their verbals, and just name a few players who you think are going to sign next week that you think will have a big impact during their time in Happy Valley.
Yeah, I mean, with Penn State, the first thing that always comes to mind is the offensive line because, under James Franklin, that's long been a point of contention is the offensive line is the Achilles heel of the team. And they've recruited that position or that position area, that position group really well over the last few years. It looks like they're going to be able to do that again with this signing period. Alex Birchmeyer, the offensive lineman, 4-star out of Ashburn, Virginia. He's a guy who's been pegged as the leader of that class for a long time now. He's been committed for a while, so I expect him fully to come in. But a guy who's a little bit more interesting for me is Javen Williams, a 4-star who has recently been elevated to a 5-star by 247 Sports. Guy has been, soaring during his high school tenure and continued to increase a lot of notoriety. He's somebody that people are really excited about out of Wyomissing, Pennsylvania at 6'5", 300 pounds.
I've seen him play.
Yeah.
He is a monster.
He's exciting.
So last year, I don't mean to interrupt you, but last year in the 3A state final that I covered, it was between Central Valley and Wyomissing, and so him and Sean Fitzsimmons were going head-to-head for a bulk of that game, and man, was that fun to watch. Because it's like these two guys could be playing – I mean, we knew they were going to play high-level college football, but it's like this could be something we see on Sundays one day. Like he was one of the biggest high school athletes I've ever seen. He's a monster.
Yeah, and he's only gotten bigger. But, that game you saw was like a preview of, okay, 4 years down the road, this is going to be like a matchup on Sundays in the NFL.
Right.
Yeah. Nuts. And then the third one for me would be Matthias Barnwell, a huge tight end out of Fredericksburg, Virginia. They've got a lot of tight ends in this class that they're looking to pick up, which is interesting because they got Brenton Strange right now. He might declare for the draft. We don't know yet. He's eligible to. Theo Johnson and Tyler Warren, as well as a couple of other guys. But they are really pursuing the tight end position hard in this class. And Barnwell is a 6'6", 255-pound tight end as a high school kid. That's huge, right? Yeah. For any position. You could be that as an offensive lineman and say, that's good block.
I see that frame, and I think that's a redshirt move to left tackle.
Yeah, seriously. So
that's what you see with a lot of guys who are that big in high school. One redshirt year, and you move them to left tackle, and they have that athleticism. Wouldn't be shocked to see that.
Right. So he's got that type of mobility, that flexibility, where if you trim him down a little bit, you can make him a big body tight end, or he can be a development project for a couple years down the line on the offensive line. Either way, my top three guys, they're not the most entertaining picks because they're pretty much all linemen in the trenches, but that's what's going to help Penn State win games, and these guys are probably their most ballyhooed recruits.
Okay. So for Pitt, the number one guy I have my eyes on is Isaiah Neal. He's the only 4-star in Pitt's recruiting class because they've lost so many guys, and he was just elevated to a 4-star. But what makes him intriguing, aside from his high ranking, is the position he plays. He's a defensive lineman. Pitt, they create good pass rushers. It's just been a thing between, Canty being a unanimous All-American. You had Twyman, Patrick Jones. You can go back further, Aaron Donald. Plenty of guys to go along with that. Greg Romeus, Jabal Shear, just in the last 20 years. Seems like Pitt always has a really good defensive lineman, a really good guy who can get to the quarterback. Charlie Partridge, for my money, is one of the best defensive linemen or defensive line coaches in the country. And this could be the next 3-4-star recruit that he gets his hands on, that he turns into a big-time playmaker. And I think Neal adds some value, because you look at where Pitt's defensive line is going to be next year, with John Morgan going in the transfer portal, Habakkuk Baldonado announcing that he's playing in a Senior Bowl game, and Cansey presumably going to the National Football League. Those are 3 of your 4 starters gone right there. They have that next wave ready to go, but what makes that defensive line special is the depth. So you need to reload with the next wave of reinforcements, now that the reinforcements are being called to the front lines. So I think Neal is one of those guys who will probably redshirt for a year and then come in and make a big impact 2-3 seasons from now. But he could be Pitt's, one of Pitt's next guys up on the defensive line and make a huge impact. Another guy on the defensive side of the ball that I have my eye on is Shadarian Harrison. He's a 3-star cornerback from Florida. And primarily what I like most about him is his size. He's 6'2". He's only 175 right now, but that's going to, if you can get him to 6'2", 200, 210. I mean, Pitt, if you look, talked about defensive linemen in the NFL, there are a lot of Pitt defensive backs who get taken in the late rounds and catch on in the NFL because of the scheme they have to play in with Pat Narduzzi. They're always playing cover 1, cover 0, little help. It's kind of like throwing you in the middle of a river, and you either drown or you learn how to swim. And that's kind of how it works in Oakland. And it shows that tough mentality gets you ready for the next level. And of all of those guys that I just, that Pitt has in the NFL right now, not many of them are physical specimens. They're kind of undersized, be it through them being a little shorter or them not being able to put on a lot of weight. And you even look at Pitt's secondary now, they've had some talented corners. MJ Devonshire and Marquez Williams both earned all ACC recognition. Neither of those guys are physical specimens. MJ is very skinny, and Marquez, I'm as tall as him. I'm like 5'8". So yeah, but they can play well. So bringing in this kid who's already 6'2", you probably redshirt him, because I think Williams and Devonshire will be back next season. You bulk him up. Having a 6'2", 6'3", 200 to 210 pound corner, that could be something different that Pitt really hasn't had recently, and it could be fun to watch if his skills can translate to the next level with that kind of frame. The third guy I have my eye on, as far as people I anticipate in signing next week, is Ty Diefenbach. He's a 2-star quarterback. He is the replacement for Kenny Minchey, essentially. When Minchey decommitted, Pitt went right after this guy. He was a UNLV commit. He's a long-term prospect, a long-term project for Coach Signetti. But he committed instantly. Minchey decommitted. They went hard after him. They got an offer. They gave him an offer. He committed the next day. This kid's 6'5". He's from California. And again, Pitt has its short-term answer at quarterback with Dracovic, and they're going after the other kid from Penn State in the portal right now, who could also, is it Velo?
Veyer.
Veyo. Or Veyer?
Veyer, French name, French Canadian. Hard one.
All right. So yeah, Veyer is the other guy they're really looking at. You bring those two guys in, you got, your starter and then presumably your next starter, but Diefenbach could be the long-term project where you can redshirt him, and maybe after 2 or 3 years of learning the system, he'll be ready to roll with this new group that's coming in with him. So he's exciting just because Pitt needed to add some depth to its quarterback room. So speaking of adding depth now, we'll move to recruiting coverage is hard enough, but transfer portal coverage is just insane. With that being said, it's very exciting, very intriguing to try to guess where guys are going and try to follow along, maybe read the tea leaves, try to get some sources to give you something. But with that being said, I think both Pitt and Penn State could get a lot better this offseason from adding just 1 or 2 key pieces through the portal. Pitt especially. So we're going to go right now. It's Christmas time, Christmas list. For Pitt's Christmas list, for the transfer portal, 1 offensive, 1 defensive player. I'll ask you to do the same for Penn State. But for Pitt, On offense, I'm here in Nebraska. I got to go with the guy who used to play at Nebraska, Dakotas Crawford, receiver. Pitt needs receivers, plain and simple. They're just really low on depth. They've already had 2 leave through the portal. They weren't great at receiver this year to begin with, and there's a chance their top receiver, Jared Wayne, goes to the NFL. So if they lose him, I mean, you're really looking at slim pickings in that receiver room where, a year ago we were talking about how Pitt had one of the best receiver rooms in the country with Jordan Addison and Jared Wayne, and then all these new transfers coming in, and now it's not the same. So bringing in someone, they're in the mix for Cephas, the Penn Hills kid. I know Penn State is in on him as well. And they'll have Bub Means and Kanate Mumfield likely returning. So 2 returning starters is good. And even if Cephas does come to Pitt, that's great. But he has 1-2 years of eligibility. They need to find guys who are going to be around for a little bit, who can really figure it out. And while they have 3 verbal commits that are wide receivers right now, you need a little bit more than just a 3-star who hasn't played at the collegiate level. You bring in Dakotas Crawford, I think it's a name. It's a name, and Pitt hasn't brought in some names. So I just think he's quite literally a name, but he's well known more than just his name. He had a pretty high profile high school career as well. So that would be a big addition with his 4 years, I believe, of eligibility. That would be a huge, huge signing if the Panthers could land him. Defensively, the guy I want to see Pitt land is Donovan McMillan. Peters Township grad, local kid, played 2 years in the SEC, and I think he'd be a great fit for this defense. He'd be a great replacement for Eric Hallett, who I think is going to the NFL, an All-American safety. You plug in McMillan, who could come in here, and that's a very important position in Pitt's defense because that's really the only guy they ever have deep in coverage helping out. So you have to be able to be a ball hawk and play center field and make a lot of plays. I think McMillan could be a really good, quick plug-and-play answer for the Panthers defense. Who are 2 transfer portal targets for you, Andrew?
Well, first off, I got to say, I think you're reading my Christmas list, Noah, because Dante Cephas is exactly what I had for Penn State.
Yep.
Second point, Dakotas Crawford, for any of you who haven't seen it yet, please watch the commercial of him with the AC Unit Company. I know you have, Noah, but that's the best thing in NIL history, in my opinion.
Without question.
But with Cephas, I think it does make a lot of sense for Penn State for reasons beyond just, he's a Penn Hills guy. He's, from the Pittsburgh area. That would point to going to Pitt. But there are a couple of Penn Hills guys in Daquan Hardy, Tank Smith, who are on the Penn State roster. And really, the Penn State Nittany Lions are pursuing receivers hard in the transfer portal. They are desperate, and especially so after what I considered pretty darn surprising news that Parker Washington was declaring for the NFL. That really took me for a spin. He had a down year in his junior campaign, had a really good sophomore year, and kind of burst some of the scene as a freshman. But he wasn't as good last year. He got hurt at the end of the season, had a season-ending injury. James Franklin indicated that to us. So, he doesn't do it when it's not of the season-ending variety. Got to believe it's kind of a serious injury. And he's an undersized receiver. And now he's going to the NFL. So I'm not one to judge guys, based on the decisions they make. But that one definitely surprised me. It's put Penn State in a tough spot from the receiver room perspective because now no Parker and no Mitchell Tinsley, who they got from Western Kentucky last year. He used his last year of eligibility. So Penn State's leading returning receivers are both tight ends. Their top receiver, who's an actual receiver, is Keandre Lambert-Smith. And I think he cracked 200 yards, pretty close. Took him the last game of the season to do that. So my top 2 guys are both going to be receivers. I'm going with Cephas out of Kent State. He was a little bit banged up this year, didn't have as much production. But what he put on tape in that game against Ohio, what he did last year with an awesome season, he's somebody Penn State's really excited about. And the next one would be Rara Thomas from Mississippi State. He's another guy who's entered the portal. He's shown the ability to produce at the SEC level in high, passing offenses with, obviously the late Mike Leach. What he was able to do with those offenses in Starkville, he's part of that. It's kind of in a similar identity, similar mold to what Mike Yursich wants to do with the offense at Penn State. So I think your top 2 targets, if your Christmas list is 1, it's Cephas. But if you can get multiple receivers, do it, because this is a young, inexperienced group that is needing production and needs it fast, especially with, a 5-star quarterback that you're breaking in for his first season. Might help to have some veteran receivers versus throwing everybody into the fire, a bunch of young guys all at the same time.
Cephas is an interesting case, man. I mean, he was a guy, you were, I think, probably in college when he was in high school. When his efforts at Penn Hills during that state championship run were just insane. And his head coach, little Whitfield football factoid for you, was Coach Ladon, who just led Pine Richland to a
Yeah.
state championship, guy you got to speak with last weekend. So that was a fun run to watch from afar. I didn't ever really cover it, but like I followed along. And I mean, he was incredible, and I think it was academics that prevented him from going a little further to like any bigger program than Kent State. But man, I mean, he made the most of his opportunity, and now just seeing him, I mean, every major college program wants him. I do think it's down to I don't have a ton of info on this, but I do believe it's between Pitt, Penn State, and West Virginia. Those are probably his top three, and I think Pitt and West Virginia or Pitt and Penn State are his top two. So whatever team can come away with him that's a big get for sure. I would venture to say he's probably going to Penn State just based upon the way they run their offense, and their future layout of quarterbacks seem a little bit more enticing personally, but that's just my guess. Sure. Anyway, we'll move on now. And Andrew, we were talking about it before the show. This is a great weekend of college football.
Yeah.
Like if this was just a regular season slate, granted, like we don't have like any top 10 matchups or anything, but we have a ranked matchup. We have some awesome storylines and some Power 5 conference matchups. And it's just the first, these are supposed to be the terrible bowl games that no one cares about. But we have a good weekend of football ahead of us. Just looking through all the matchups, Andrew, which one's your favorite?
Yeah, I mean, this is such a great weekend for it, and I think that really that points to how good of a season this was with so many teams that had talent and were competitive. For me, I'm going to show off my West Coast bias a little bit and say that I'm really excited about the Vegas Bowl because Oregon State's playing Florida, and that's a Florida team that was trending down pretty much all season after that great win against Utah. And Oregon State, talk about a way to finish off the season. Jonathan Smith, I got to tip my cap to him because the coaching job he's done there is very, resemblant of what Mike Riley did for a long time with the Beavers. That program was down. In 2018, they were 2-10, 1-8 in conference play. And this year, Oregon State went 9-3. Really should have gone 10-2 if they don't blow it against USC. Beat Oregon in their rivalry game. That's a really good Beavers team. That's a really good squad. Kudos to Jonathan Smith. And I'm just excited to see them in action against an SEC team because the narrative is always, a team like that, like a Oregon State, they can compete against, Washington State. They can eke out a couple of surprise victories against Pac-12 teams, but can they do it against the actual big boys, teams like Florida that recruit at that level? That's so exciting to me. And plus, I mean, come on, Anthony Richardson. That never stops getting exciting.
Yeah. Did Oregon State's quarterback enter the portal?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I wanted to make sure that was, and then Richardson, is he playing in this?
We'll see. We'll find out.
Yeah. Like I haven't heard anything on that. That'll be interesting.
Yeah.
But I mean, either way, even if that game without those two quarterbacks, I just think the rest of the team around them, I agree with everything you said. Like Oregon State has a chance to really make a statement here, even though it should be a favorite and it's a number 14 team in the country and it has every reason to be upset that it's playing in a bowl this early. Yeah. If it goes and stomps Florida, I could say, look, like we were on the cusp of a top 10 national finish this year. Look what we did. That's a huge, huge thing for a program like that. I have a different pick. I also want to highlight these games, though. We talked about last week, the Fenway Bowl, just the storyline of, the coach leaving one program, going to the other, some bad blood there. And I don't when, as, going back to my horrible high school career as a player, I would never want to play. I hated when we had to play football games on a baseball field. Football should never be played on a baseball field, period, is just a take I have. And while the Fenway Bowl looks cool in the photo beforehand, those aerial drone shots, same for the Pinstripe Bowl, keep football on football fields. That's just my little grandstand there. And then the Cure Bowl is also entertaining. Troy and UTSA, a top 25 matchup. I mean, one of these teams won the season ranked, one of them won't. But, I mean, these are cool every year you have 2 or 3 group of 5 teams who they get ranked once a decade and they have a chance to end the season ranked. And that's huge for their program where they can say, look where we finished. We finished ahead of Florida. We finished ahead of Texas A&M, all these schools that are bigger than us. I mean, they could probably say they finished ahead of Pitt, and that's pretty notable. So that's an exciting one. But the game that I have my eye on is the Celebration Bowl. Deion Sanders' final game at Jackson State University. Say what you want about Deion Sanders. I think what he did at Jackson State is tremendous. The attention that he brought to that program and how exciting he just made everything there. College Game Day was there, documentary series, and all types of content. He brought in great players, and sure, some are going to leave. But look around at other HBCUs and the guys that they've hired as head coaches since Deion went to Jackson State. I believe Hugh Jackson is a head coach at an HBCU now. I know Eddie George is a head coach at an HBCU now. And while no one possesses the swagger and just coolness of Deion Sanders, and very few people probably could ever pull off what he did there in that short amount of time, making that program nationally relevant and bringing in high-ranked guys. I don't expect anyone to ever do that again. I think that you're still, even with his departure, you're still going to see HBCU football moving forward, upward, because of his time there. It was very fun to follow along as a fan. I believe his team lost in last year's Celebration Bowl. I remember watching that game. His son had a really poor game. So, it's his son's last game, assuming he's going to transfer over to Colorado with his dad. That'd be kind of crazy if he didn't. So he's got something to prove, and all of these guys do. They want to finish the job. They had that big season last year, and they lost in the bowl game. This is an exclamation point on a very, very interesting college football story that I can't wait to revisit 10 years from now when the documentaries are made about it. So I'm excited to watch that. Deion's last game at Jackson State before he heads off for good to Colorado. That's on Saturday at noon on ABC, the Celebration Bowl. So tune in and watch that one. I mean, HBU football is so cool. Just the history behind it and the bands and all of it. It's one of a kind. So make sure you're in front of a TV for that one. Andrew, any final thoughts?
Let's get Bowl Mania started. You got me excited talking about the Celebration Bowl. No, what is it, Thursday right now? Get us to Saturday. Come on.
Let's go. Absolutely. Be sure to keep following along and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. We'll keep the content coming for you. And everyone stay warm and stay tuned in for more stuff here on the Post-Gazette Sports Now YouTube channel.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you liked the video, please like it and subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you enjoyed it on Apple Podcasts, please rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. For 6 months of digital access to post-gazette.com for just $6, click the link down in the description.